We are on to chapter 16. We're down to the final two chapters of the term. Hang in there, you're almost done. Chapter 16, we're going to talk about working capital. We're going to talk about alternative working capital policies, cash management, inventory and account receivable management, trade credit, and bank loans. Working capital terminology, working capital is just current assets. Net working capital is current assets minus current liabilities. Net operating working capital, operating current assets minus operating current liabilities. Current assets investment policy, deciding the level of each type of current asset to hold and how to finance current assets. Working capital management, controlling cash, inventories, and accounts receivable, plus short term liability management. So working capital, current assets, that's just assets within a year or less. Net working capital, current assets minus current liabilities. Current assets, year or less. Current liabilities, year or less. Both of those are on the balance sheet. Net operating working capital, operating current assets minus operating current liabilities. Current assets investment policy, that's just what you're going to do with your money and your inventory. And then working capital management, that's just how you try to control cash, inventories, accounts receivable, and short term liability management. So, ski, that's the example for this week. Follow along on the PDF that you can find on Canvas. We're looking at their asset investment policy within the industry. So, this is something most companies do. They're part of an industry. They compare a lot of their ratios with how other companies within their industry are doing. And they might have different goals than others within their industry, but they still look at the outside industry to determine how they want to run their business and what they're trying to do. So just because you're over or below a, the industry average doesn't necessarily mean you're good or bad. It's just another tool to use to measure how your company is doing. So current assets investment policies are reflected in the current ratio, turnover of cash and securities, inventory turnover, and days sales outstanding, DSO. These ratios indicate Ski has large amounts of working capital relative to its level of sales. That just means it has a lot of stuff on hand. Ski is either very conservative or inefficient, and you wouldn't know that unless you went and visited Ski. They might be very conservative because maybe they're in a ski resort town in the middle of nowhere and it takes months for inventory to get to them. Or maybe they just buy a lot of stuff one time a year. You don't know. You'd have to dig deeper in to figure it out. But could they be better? A conservative policy may be appropriate if it leads to greater profitability. However, ski is not as profitable as the average firm in the industry. This suggests the company has excessive current assets. So are they ordering too much at a time? Are they keeping too much on hand? So working capital financing policies, moderate, match the maturity of the assets with the maturity of the financing. That just means when you're buying stuff, you make sure you borrow for the same time. Aggressive, use short-term financing to finance permanent assets. So you say you use the credit card to buy a long-term asset. That's how you can equate it. Or conservative, using permanent capital for permanent assets and temporary assets. That's like borrowing on a HELOC instead of a credit card. That's a long-term borrowing. Cash conversion cycle. The cash conversion cycle focuses on the length of time between when a company makes payments to its creditors and when a company receives payments from its customers. So you have to buy the inventory and then sell it to your customers. When you buy the inventory, you owe somebody else money, and then at a certain point you're going to sell that, and then your customers owe you that money. And so what's that time frame? Because you have to make up the difference with capital, cash. So it's inventory conversion period plus average collection period minus payables deferral period. What does that look like? Cash conversion cycle. So the inventory conversion period is days per year divided by inventory turnover plus the average collection period, days sales outstanding, minus the payables deferral period. So they gave us all this within the example. 365 divided by 4.82 gives us 76. 46 days is the average collection period, and 30 days is the payables deferral period, which gives us 92 days. That's a long time. That's not great. Cash budget. This is really important, especially for cyclical companies, seasonal companies, or new companies. If you don't have cash to pay your people or buy your inventory, it doesn't matter how much money you've made on an income statement. If you can't pay for things, you're toast. You can use loans to help get over those periods of when you don't have so much cash coming in, or funds available to invest. It can be daily, weekly, or monthly forecast. Everywhere I've been has been monthly, but some places do it more often than that. Um, how could bad debts be worked into the cash budget? Well, if you're selling to people on credit, a percentage of those people are not going to pay you. So if you know that you have 100 people that owe you $1 and you know that 3% are not going to pay you, you need to cash budget that you're only going to receive $97. Lower collections would lead to higher borrowing requirements because you have to buy the inventory, remember, and then you sell it to people. And if you don't collect that money, you have to make up that money somewhere. So, Ski's forecasted cash budget. In the example, cash holdings will exceed the target balance for each month except for October and November. Cash budget indicates the company is holding too much cash. Ski could improve its EVA by either investing in cash in more productive assets or by returning cash to its shareholders. So you'd have to get into the weeds and kind of see what are they doing? What are they doing with their cash? Is there a chance that they could just even invest it in a small money market account and make money on your money? Why might Ski want to maintain a relatively high amount of cash? If sales turn out to be considerably less than expected, Ski could face a cash shortfall. A company may choose to hold large amounts of cash if it does not have much faith in its sales forecast or it's very conservative. The cash may be used in part to fund future investments. Just because you have a lot of cash on hand in short term 1 year stuff doesn't mean you can't invest it in relatively liquid assets, certificates, money market funds. Many businesses do this kind of stuff. Um, you can even do long-term certificates where if you have to pull the money out, you pay a penalty, but it's just 3 months of interest or 6 months of interest, something like that. Inventory cost. Types of inventory cost. Carrying costs, storage and handling, insurance, property taxes, depreciation, obsolescence. This is just saying that if you have a bunch of inventory, you got to keep it somewhere. You got to have insurance on it in case there's a fire and it burns down or there's some other sort of natural disaster. Property taxes, because if you have so much you need another building, you got to pay taxes. Depreciation, because you're going to have depreciation expense. And then obsolescence, if you sell the latest and greatest widget and then every year it goes out of style, well, now you have stuff that no one's going to buy. Ordering cost, cost of placing an order, shipping, handling, cost of running short. If you have that fancy widget and you sell out and a bunch of people come in, maybe they don't come and see you anymore. And then reducing inventory levels generally reduce carrying costs, increasing ordering costs, and may increase the cost of running short. So if you have too much stuff so this is just saying if you try to lower how much inventory on hand, you might run into these problems or you might pay more for placing the orders. So is Ski holding too much inventory? Their inventory turnover ratio is considerably lower than the industry. That means they have a lot of stuff and it's taking a while for it to turn over. Um, by holding excessive inventory, the firm is increasing its cost, which reduces its return on equity. Um, this additional working capital must be financed, so the EVA is also lowered. But like we said at the beginning, maybe they have to have a lot of inventory on hand because it's tough to get stuff up there, wherever they are. So what happens if reduces its inventory without adversely affecting sales? What effect will this have on the cash position? Well, in the short run, they're going to have more cash because people are going to buy stuff, inventory will go down, cash will go up. So this will reduce the financing and the target cash balance needed. So they won't have to have as much cash on hand. The long run, they can take that cash to maybe make investments or they can give it back to their shareholders. Do Ski's customers pay more or less promptly than those of its competitors? They pay in 45.6 days and the industry average is 32. Ski's customers are paying less promptly. Ski should consider tightening its credit policy in order to reduce its days sales outstanding. And without digging in more, we don't know why Ski's days outstanding is so long. Um, Are people staying there for a long time and then they go home and they finally get around to paying it? Do they only accept checks in the mail and the mail takes forever nowadays? It takes 3 weeks for people to get it. Um, do they only deposit the checks at every other Friday? Like we would have to dig into why this number is the way it is before we can make changes to make it better. So the elements of a credit policy, how long do customers get? Discounts. Sometimes you offer discounts for people that pay early. Credit standards. If you require people with great credit to come do business with you, you'll have fewer bad debts, but you might eliminate some customers. And your collection policy. Do you call people on day one that they're late? Um, but if you do that, you might damage some customer relationships because they don't like those phone calls. Does Ski face any risk if it restricts its credit policy? Yeah, some people might not buy from us. They might go somewhere else if they think that they're being pressured too soon, especially if you have a bad collection person. Make people feel bad about calling you up or if they're just over aggressive. If Ski reduces its DSO without adversely affecting sales, how would this affect its cash? Short run, we're going to have more cash. Long term, hopefully they can invest that cash and pay it out to their shareholders, just like the inventory. What is trade credit? Trade credit is credit furnished by firm suppliers. Just like our customers have 30 days to pay us, we have time to pay our creditors. So the terms of trade credit, let's say we spend a $3 million with terms of 110 net 30. That means if we pay within 10 days, we get a 1% discount, but it's due without in 30 days. If we can forego discounts and pay on day 40 without a penalty, that's good too. Breaking down trade credit payables level, if the firm takes discounts, we're going to save $82,000 a year. If the firm takes no discounts, we can save that because that's the effective cash amount that we can save. So the firm loses $30,000 of discounts to obtain $246,575 in extra trade credit, which works out to be about 12.2%. So the trade credit is worth about 12%, which is higher than the 10%. So we just wouldn't pay until day 40. But if you need the cash, paying early to get that discount would be worthwhile, especially if you need the cash and you're not investing your money. Effective cost of trade credit is 13% using the EAR, so 1.01 to 12 to the 1.67 using this formula. Bank loans. We can borrow $100,000 for 1 year at 8%. Interest may be set up one of the following scenarios. Simple interest, that's once a year. An installment loan add-on 12 months. So simple interest just means we're paying 8%. That's easy. If we're doing add-on interest, that means that we're paying the $8,000 at the beginning, and then we paid $9,000 a month. The average loan outstanding is $50,000 because it's twice a year that we have to pay back the principal, so its effective rate is 16%. So that is much more than the trade credit or getting customers to pay us back a little bit early. All right, that was chapter 16. One more week to go. You guys got this. I'll talk to you later.